Hello, everybody. Hello, whoever is in the audience. Thank you for coming, and everybody wandering around the building. This is our menopause session this afternoon. I just want to say something as someone who is knee-deep in the menopause. We have younger people around that are clearly or probably aren't there yet. And I just wanted to say that it's quite a busy, noisy space, and sometimes a space that can be a little bit negative. And I just want to say that when it comes to you, we have got this, we can manage this, and we have some wonderful experts at our disposal that get us through this. So I won't talk any longer. I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Joanna Christou.
Hello. Should I stand up? I don't know.
Go on, stand up. Why not? Go on, stand up.
Okay,
Yes, stand up.
Oh, this is very intimidating. Hi, I'm Joanna Christou. I work at the Cosmetic Skin Clinic in London. We are a large team of experts who got you covered for everything you need for the all stages of the aging process.
Okay. Dr. Shirin.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Shirin Lakhani. I'm an aesthetic doctor and also an intimate health specialist. My clinic's in Greenhithe in Kent, and I do a lot of work in the women's wellness and menopause stage.
And Dr. Federica.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Federica Amati. I'm the head nutritionist at Zoe, and I'm also a medical scientist and nutrition educator at Imperial College London. Pleasure to be here.
Ah, wonderful. So we're going to move along. And first of all, my first question to Dr. Joanna is, please can you take us through what happens to the structure of our face as we move into peri and menopause?
Well, the face is a very complicated area of anatomy. There is lots of different layers and lots of things going on, and the hormones in youth are very protective of that anatomy. In other words, estrogen keeps the collagen going. As we enter menopause, we lose our estrogen, so goes the collagen. And so there's lots of changes on the face at that stage. It's actually quite a drastic change, about 30% in the first few years of menopause. So a lot of people do come for treatment around that time. And we can talk through all the different layers and talk about all the different treatments.
Well, so we have injectables, but we also have other fancy gadgets in clinic. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you could just briefly take us over through some of the injectables and what they can particularly do for us in mid and later life.
So the injectables really is two primary components. There's the volume replacement component, and then the sort of collagen boosting skin quality component. Because of the loss of volume, dermal fillers do play a role in the menopause, in the menopausal face and treating the face, because we want to sort of very strategically replenish some of that structure that's been lost. Obviously, we don't want to overfill, we don't want to distort the face, but as we lose volume, putting a little bit back is very flattering and very complimentary. The collagen boosting is all about skin quality and banking collagen and elastin, so making the skin health itself a lot more vibrant, putting some of that plumpness and hydration back into the skin. And there's an array of different kind of nuances and different treatments that need to be considered for each person that comes for consultation.
So that's it. How do you know which one is best for you? Because I, as a customer and a user of these things, I'm often confused by them. There's such a lot to offer. There's some wonderful machines and gadgets that at your disposal. Could you take us through just a couple of them and tell us what the benefits of a couple of them? So I'm going to go straight for all therapy because I've had all therapy. Would you like to tell everybody just what that one can do?
All therapy is primarily about deep level tightening. So with menopause, we lose that kind of firmness and tightness of the skin. So all therapy using ultrasound gets to the deep levels of the muscles, the ligaments, and just firms it all up again. So clinically what you achieve is a lift. So it's a massive favourite in our clinic. Morpheus8 is another one. I'm sure you know all about Morpheus8, but that's more about kind of textural tightening and improving the sort of crepiness of the skin. So as the skin gets a bit thinner as we lose collagen, so you can improve the kind of firmness and crepiness of the skin overall.
And many of us know that anti-wrinkle injections, and then we have Botox to replace a loss of volume, or aesthetically to have little tweaks. I know everybody's different, but if someone's coming into the clinic and saying, what's stage one? What do you think we can get the most benefit from as a kind of entry level into aesthetics, which one do you think might be your starter? And that's a really tricky question because it's often layering.
Yeah.
But where do you think would be a good place for somebody to perhaps start if they're dipping their toe in?
It really depends on the assessment of the patient and what they want to achieve. So there really isn't a one size fits all. Although we have these principles of understanding how the face changes and all the different treatments that are available to us, it is about the individual in front of you and how to deliver that treatment for them. Some people are very nervous about doing anything too committed, so they like to start with a collagen booster, for example, so a small injectable treatment that perhaps doesn't change the face but enhances the health of the skin. Others, for example, might have lost a lot of volume, so the face is very sunken and the contours have changed, so therefore fillers becomes the primary mode of treatment to give that structure and the shape back. So honestly, there isn't a right answer. You just have to have a really bespoke consultation with someone who knows what they're doing and how to assess you effectively.
And is it ever too late to start?
It's never too late. No, I mean, at different stages in the menopause, you will have lost more volume versus more elasticity, or the skin quality might have changed more. So irrespective of age, it's just about getting a correct consultation so you know what is the most impactful treatment for that person. But it's not about age, it's just about doing a good clinical assessment and knowing how to deliver an appropriate treatment in an intelligent and well-managed way so you don't end up over-treated.
Yes, because we always think, I certainly always think, and many people do, that really good work can go unnoticed. And I think it's really important, it's a choice as to whether we share our work or not. I think it's quite nice to share it with the Girl Squad and say, I've had a little bit of this done, and kind of share the knowledge and give everybody the intel. But when you have really subtle good work, you literally don't need to tell everybody what you're doing. People can kind of guess a little bit because you kind of look very fresh, but it's up to it. You can get such good subtle work done now that you don't have to look done, do you?
Yeah, it should always be has she, hasn't she, rather than definitely she has.
Yes.
And there's multiple aspects to that. It's the treatments you do and the order you do them in and how much you do of them and how quickly you do them as well. Because, of course, if there's 2 or 3 different things that are on the plan, if you do them all in one day, that will look very different to if it's staged over a period of time. And so it just needs to be carefully delivered, and then you should be able to leave everyone guessing, and only you and your doctor know what you've actually had done.
Yes, and that's the layering, really, like the icing on the cake. How many layers of icing would you like on the cake? And all of them to be used together. And many of these treatments can be used side by side or complement each other too. I think sometimes people might think you need to kind of pick a horse, have that kind of treatment or that kind of treatment. Most and many treatments do actually fit together and complement each other quite well, don't they?
Definitely. In fact, if you sort of pick just one modality and only do that, that can be quite distorting of the face as time goes on. So if you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and you layer it up, as you say, so you just never overdo one thing, then you will look great and you'll just look refreshed and healthy and lifted, and no one should be able to tell.
And our little at-home gadgets, I have at-home gadgets, I'm a big fan of them. Can you really ever achieve at home with the gadgets that we can buy at home, can you ever really achieve the result that you can get in clinic at home?
There are lots of great gadgets out there. They do deliver something. They can't work on the deep levels in the way that in-clinic treatments can. And of course, they're not going to replace, injectable treatments, etc. But I would certainly say that playing your part at home makes a difference in the long term. And it's simple things like drink enough water. So if you're really dehydrated and the skin is kind of sullen and dry, that is going to have an impact. And wearing your SPF, etc., etc., big one for an anti-aging point of view. So all of these things work. And yes, at-home gadgets, they do something for sure. They definitely do.
And do you think that they can prop up and enhance in between clinic appointments?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about things like New Face and Zip and at home, little kind of lifting devices. They can kind of maybe enhance, as you say, with
Yeah.
drinking water, eating healthy
Eating
fats.
well, yeah.
Yeah. What are the things that people can take away today? There's kind of take homes that people could do right now when they leave, particularly in menopause, that would help our skin right now. Just kind of 5 things that you could do, or a few things that we could do at home.
Well, I think your last point there kind of really hit the nail on the head. It's having that whole system approach. So looking after yourself, eating well. We're going to hear from Dr. Federica about that. Hormone replacement, good skincare, doing all the things right in your own time, and then doing a few small treatments, whatever's right for you, depending on the consultation you have with your doctor, and just being consistent and careful and sort of making sure you age well rather than wanting to do anything kind of serious or drastic. And if you have this sort of well-placed plan, and over a period of time, you'll reap the benefits of all of those things without doing anything risky or weird and wonderful. So be consistent, lots of small interventions at home and in clinic, and it will pay off.
Yes, and actually using, really crucially, SPF, but looking after ourselves internally and great skincare enhances the work that you're doing in clinics. We literally get more value for money from the treatments we're having from you when we go home and use great skincare, protect ourselves from damage, eat and drink well.
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. Skincare is part and parcel of all of these things we're talking about as well, using retinols, vitamin C's, good cleansing, etc. It absolutely cannot be forgotten.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're moving now on to Dr. Shirin, and we're going to talk about straight on to the vagina. We're not holding back here. We're going straight on to the vagina and the pelvic floor area. And my first question to you, Dr. Shirin, is what is happening around menopause to our not so private parts?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that there's been a lot more in the media about menopause and how it affects us. And that is a great thing. The conversation is more open now. But the one thing where we're still not talking enough is about our vulvas and our vaginas. It's not just a little discomfort, menopause. It can be something that can really limit your quality of life. So what happens is, we've heard about how important estrogen is for the skin. It's also extremely important for the vulva and the vagina. So as we lose estrogen, the vagina becomes less elastic, it becomes drier, and it becomes thinner. So the kind of symptoms you get are vaginal dryness, itching, burning, pain generally, or pain on intercourse as well. You can get fissures and splitting as well, and you also get a lot of urinary symptoms around this time. So as I said, it's not just a little bit of a nuisance, it's something that can really impact your quality of life. And we shouldn't underestimate the importance of sexual relations as well. It's important for us as human beings to be intimate with our partners and to continue having intercourse as long as we want to. So a lot of women find that when they get to menopause, that side of things falls apart because it's uncomfortable and it's painful.
And depending on what algorithm you are being served when we research things like this, there can be lots of pros HRT and negativity towards HRT. Can I ask your feelings around, your professional advice around HRT in general?
Okay, so I'm a firm advocate for HRT. We're living a lot longer than we used to. And if you look at women now going through menopause in their 50s, they're going to spend a third to half their lives in menopause. And that is a state of hormone deficiency. If you talk to a lot of longevity doctors, part of what they're doing to increase the healthy part of our lifespan, which we call the health span, is looking at hormones and nutrition. So one of the things I say is, you don't tell a diabetic to just get on with it, do you? And that's another hormone deficiency state. If you look at thyroid hormone and hypothyroidism, we treat that, and you're not made to feel ashamed to have treatment for that. So why do women get told that you don't need hormones? It's going to cause cancer, it's going to make you unwell, and it's just a natural part of life, so just get on with it. I'm completely against that view. I think it should be the woman's choice, it should be an informed choice, and it should be based on proper information, not misinformation.
And can you take HRT indefinitely, forever?
I will. There's a myth, and this stems from the old-fashioned HRT that is still available on the NHS. So with the older HRT that was synthetic, there was a higher risk of cancer and disease and things like that. But with the newer, more natural HRT, which is called body identical on the NHS, it's called bioidentical if you go to a compounding pharmacy, that is much less likely to give you the problems that the synthetic HRT did. So with that form of HRT, there is no reason to stop it.
And what about topical HRT?
So when we're talking about GSM, which is the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, one of the important things with that is it's one of the symptoms of menopause that does not improve as you progress through the menopause. It gets worse as you go on. It's one of the least talked about effects of the menopause. And even when a woman goes to her doctor to talk about the hot flashes and the night sweats and the brain fog, they don't tend to bring up the vaginal symptoms, and only 7% of healthcare practitioners will actually inquire about them. And as I've said, it can be quite a distressing part of a woman's life. It really affects your quality of life. HRT systemically doesn't always help with the genitourinary side. So if you are suffering, it is important, if you want to take HRT, to consider vaginal HRT. It's safe even in women who've had breast cancer.
Systemically is when we're applying it.
Systemically is when you're applying the estrogen,
The gels, taking the pill.
patches, things like that, taking the pill, taking progesterone tablets.
And topical is...
It's local rather than topical, because the creams are topical as well.
Oh, of course, yes.
So it's localised HRT for the vagina and the vulva.
Which, insert. And you can do... Well,
You can do
everybody's
both.
different. You can do one without the other, both, combination, whatever
absolutely.
is best
Whatever
for you.
suits you. If you've got vaginal symptoms, I recommend using vaginal HRT. And if you want to take systemic HRT on top of that, that's perfectly safe to do so.
Okay. What can we do at home, every one of us, can we do at home to improve our vaginal health and our pelvic floor?
So at home, it's about looking after yourself holistically. Nutrition, exercise, that tends to help reduce some of the symptoms of the menopause. One of the really important things to do is your pelvic floor exercises. And I'm trying to improve education at a school level so that young girls and boys are taught about the importance of doing their pelvic floor exercises in PE lessons. Because by the time you get to pregnancy, it's a little bit late. You want to be doing it from when you're young and carry on doing it throughout your life to maintain the health of your pelvic floor.
Did I read somewhere that this, somewhere in Europe, they teach it at school, I think?
That's what I'd love them to do here.
Yeah, and that was really new to me. That this is, I'm a little bit late to the party. I used to do them maybe once a week, whenever I remembered it, or whenever I was watching Sex and the City or something. Samantha did it, then I did it. And part of something I've done lately is I installed an app, which is called Health and Her. I quite like it. And it tells me to drink a bit more water, and it tells me to do my pelvic floor exercises. This thing is pinging all day long. Well, 2 or 3 times a day. Pings.
Yeah, you need to be doing it several times a day. Whenever you remember, do a few pelvic floor exercises. Most of you are probably doing them now, because the only time we tend to do them is when someone talks about it. Otherwise, it goes out of our mind.
Yes.
And there are devices now that can help you with your pelvic floor, because the majority of people are too busy to remember to do them themselves. Secondly, when you are trying to do them yourself, unless you've been shown to do them properly, you're probably not doing them correctly. And when I see women in clinic, I examine them and I make them do a pelvic floor contraction to see how they're actually doing it. And the vast majority aren't doing it right.
Ah. So can you tell us right now?
So what you want to do is you want to pull up from your vagina upwards. A lot of the time when I say do a pelvic floor contraction, people squeeze their abdominal muscles, and you actually want to pull up from underneath and feel your vagina moving upwards as you're doing it.
We're all doing it right now. Yeah. And I've forgotten the name of a gadget which I bought in a purple box, and it's still in the box, which you yes.
Is it Kegel aid?
Yes.
Yeah.
It didn't work for me because I never used it. But if I were to use it, is that more effective than us just...
it makes you more aware of what you're doing. So anything that helps in that respect is fantastic. But like you said, yours is in the box. If I speak to most of my patients, theirs are also still in the box, or it's been used once.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere where we're really falling down.
And so a stage further, or not necessarily a stage further, but if somebody needs additional help and is living with symptoms that we don't have to live with, what kind of options are there available to take it next level, machines, etc.?
So it depends on what condition you're trying to treat. So when I first started looking at women's health and pelvic floor health, one of the first things that was available to me was platelet-rich plasma, which is PRP. You've probably all heard of the vampire facial. This is the vampire vagina. So it's a brilliant regenerative treatment. I use it a lot in clinic for women who have pain on intercourse or genitourinary syndrome of menopause. I also use it a lot with women with stress in urinary incontinence, and also in a condition called lichen sclerosis, which is something which is more frequent post-menopause. I don't think we've got a lot of time to go into all the conditions now, but that's a fantastic treatment. It uses your own blood to regenerate the tissue. Moving on from that, we've got some energy-based devices. So one of the first devices I had was the BTL UltraFem, which is radiofrequency vaginal tightening. And if you have children, if you give birth vaginally, even just through aging, you lose tissue in your vagina and it becomes less elastic and more lax. As a result of that, you lose the support for the internal organs, you tend to get prolapses, and sex doesn't feel as good anymore. So it's a really quick, easy treatment. It's 3 sessions, 8 minutes each, and it's effective in over 90% of women to restore that vaginal tightness back. And that in itself can help with some of the incontinence symptoms as well. If I'm looking at the pelvic floor muscles, I've got the BTL Emsella chair, which is brilliant. I think every GP surgery should have one. You sit on the chair fully clothed for half an hour and you do over 11,500 pelvic floor contractions at 100% muscle contraction. When you do your own, you're just in a little blip. With the Emsella chair, it's a stronger contraction and it's sustained. And the results from that are phenomenal in terms of improving the health of the pelvic floor. And it's not just for women, men can use it as well. Moving on from that, Joe mentioned Morpheus 8. I've got the Morpheus 8V, so imagine what the V stands for. So again, it can help with atrophy, it can help with laxity, it helps with stress incontinence. You can use it externally on the vulva to tighten the tissue as well. And I'm currently doing a study using it to treat lichen sclerosis as well.
Wow. So as we're talking about topical things that we can apply to our vagina, I want to talk a little bit about moisturizers and lubes. Because there's lots we all know that we shouldn't be slapping on, well, you might tell me otherwise, but slapping on coconut oil and various things. What do you think, or what can you advise people about moisturisers and lubes?
So coconut oil isn't actually that bad for your vulva. It's a natural oil. And a lot of my lichen sclerosis women actually use it to ease the discomfort. So that one's actually okay. What you don't want to be using is anything that's got alcohol in it or glycerin, because the sugars affect the pH of the vulva, it affects the bacteria that live there. And you don't want to be using anything with heavy perfumes either. So that rules out most of the stuff that's available on the market. So I know you're going to ask me to recommend a brand.
I know I am, because it's shocking, actually, how many big brands contain, since I learned this, contain sugars. As someone that I don't mind saying is no stranger to our friend Thrush, I didn't realise that there is sugars in many thrush treatments, in lubes, etc. And yes, I'm going to ask you to recommend a brand, and also ask you whether you should be using a specialist intimate cleanser as well.
Absolutely no to the cleanser. No cleansers whatsoever. The vagina itself is self-cleaning. You don't even need to put your shower head up there. Okay, it looks after itself. As long as you've got a healthy diet and you're not putting things you're not meant to in the area, the vagina will look after itself. In terms of lubricants aren't meant to be used long term. They're meant to be used for sexual intercourse there and then. But you can use moisturizers more long term. And with anything you're using, like you said, just make sure that there's no sugars in it, there's no alcohols or parabens, no heavy fragrances, and nothing that's going to alter the delicate balance of the vulva. The brand that seems to be the best is Yes. And I'm sure most of you have heard of that one. But even with that, I'd say all the brands have a variety of different products in their ranges, so make sure you check the labels before you buy it.
Okay. And finally, I want to ask you to give people a word of advice, because I'm quite happy talking about vulvas and vaginas and issues that I might have, but not everybody is, and that's okay. So I know that many people listening might have issues that they're worried about or concerned about, and there probably are treatments out there. What kind of words of advice would you give to people who are kind of suffering in silence?
The first thing I'd say is don't suffer in silence. Don't be embarrassed about it. Talk to your medical professionals. At the end of the day, we are doctors. We hear about all sorts of things. We don't get embarrassed, so you shouldn't get embarrassed. So that's the first thing I'd say. The other thing I try and do is encourage people to be open about calling it a vulva, not a mini or a fairy or a flower or a lady garden. Because if we own the terminology, we become more self-empowered to talk about it. Vulva is an anatomical term. It's not a dirty word. So call it what it is, and that way when you have issues with it and you talk to a healthcare professional, it's less embarrassing, because you can say to them, actually, I've got an itch on my vulva, or the pain is in my vagina, or it's on my clitoris, and your healthcare professional then is more likely to understand what the problem is. Go for your smear checks as well. Don't be embarrassed about your vulva, and find someone who will listen to you. I think that's the hardest thing at the moment with the NHS and the pressures on time. It's finding someone who will make you feel heard. And the women who come into my clinic, actually, the thing they're most grateful for is that time they get, and the fact that they can talk and I will hear them.
Thank you, thank you. And Dr. Federica, I think many of us know what we could and should be doing for a healthy lifestyle. Is there anything we need to do to elevate that for our wellness in menopause?
Yes, I think actually there's quite a lot of things people maybe don't realise they can do for health and well-being. One of the biggest studies that have been done on the menopause was actually done by us at Zoe, so the Zoe Menopause study. And we discovered quite a lot of things in that clinical trial that we just didn't know. And some of those include what symptoms women actually reported as being the most bothersome. So we were all expecting to see hot flushes and night sweats and the more commonly talked about symptoms. But what we found was that women didn't particularly care about those, but it was the sleep disturbance, it was the mood changes, it was the sudden anger and outbursts, so the rage, as it's sometimes called, and it was actually anxiety. That was what women reported as being the thing that they really wanted to try and tackle. So that was something that was really interesting to us. And then what we were particularly interested in was seeing what might be mediating these changes. What is it? Of course, estrogen being the primary driver, but what is happening in the body to make this happen? And can we do anything with diet to really help mitigate this risk? Now, the thing is that with menopause, women who enter the menopause overweight or with obesity have a much higher risk of suffering with symptoms in a more pronounced way. But I find that when you work with women, as I do, who are going through menopause, telling them that, oh, well, you should have lost some weight, it's not going to help, right? So what can we actually advise women to do today that will still help their overall health and the management of their symptoms? And what we found with the study was that actually the number one predictor of a reduction in the risk of symptoms was how many plants people ate. So regardless of whether women were carnivore, vegan, omnivore, didn't matter what dietary pattern they were following specifically. But the women who reported eating more plants day to day had a much reduced risk. And that was regardless of whether they were suffering with obesity or not. So even if women were overweight at that time, their risk reduction was, in 33% was the average risk reduction for anxiety and sleep disturbance, which is huge. And so we thought, well, this is great. This is a message that actually we can give women. And it's something that I found. So I've written a book about menopause, including this research and giving some dietary recommendations. Emma at the front has some books if anybody would like to buy one today. But essentially, most women that come to my clinic, they say, I'm getting enough protein, doctor. Definitely doing that. And I've reduced my calories and I'm going to the gym and I've started journaling, but still, I feel crap and I'm putting on weight and I don't understand. And hardly anyone comes to me and says, I know that fiber is the key. And I think that for me, the core message is actually fiber is the answer to improving that health. And the answer that we got from our study was that the reason why fiber has such an impact is because a lot of the changes in metabolic health, so how we respond to sugar, how we respond to fat, how we put on weight, a lot of them are mediated by the microbiome changes we see in women's guts. So we looked at women's gut microbiome and we did premenopausal, peri, post, and we had a cohort of age-matched men. So that if anyone says to me, it's just because they're getting older, I'll be like, no, it's not. We had age-matched men. It's got nothing to do with aging. And the change that we saw in gut microbiome composition was amazing. Some of the women who were postmenopausal, their microbiome signature was more similar to the age-matched males than it was to the premenopausal women. And we think that some of that is because certain species of microbes that are sometimes called the estrobolome are these bacteria that are actually sensitive to estrogen levels, and they produce an enzyme that helps cleave estrogen from the receptors and reactivate it. And of course, when there's no more estrogen to do that for, they sort of die off. And since the gut microbiome is an ecosystem, when you remove a large population of microbes, others tend to encroach on that space. And at that point is where we can make a huge difference of whether those new microbes that take over that space are beneficial for our health or they're going to be less beneficial for our health. So the mediation analysis we did saw that actually a proportion of those metabolic changes are due to the microbiome changes, which is really exciting because we can change our microbiome with our diet. You can't really change your genes. When you enter menopause, it's quite genetically determined, but you can change your microbiome.
And would you suggest taking a probiotic?
No. No. We do not have enough evidence on which strains or which combination of strains could help support. What we do have evidence for is that having a diet rich in a variety of different fibers and plants, so specifically plant foods, and plant foods includes, mushrooms, aubergines, nuts and seeds, whole grains, legumes, beans, chickpeas. It's not just green leafy veg, right? It's everything that grows from the ground contains fiber. So if you have a variety of plant foods, you will have a variety of fibers which will feed a variety of microbes, because microbes, each of them has a preference for what they like to eat, basically. So if you're only having, broccoli, kale, and a carrot, and you might be having lots of it, but it's not going to be as good for you in terms of maintaining a healthy microbiome as having a variety of different plants in your diet. And that's what our research really showed, it was the number of plants, not just the amount of fiber. And probiotics, research is definitely moving forwards with probiotics, but we just do not have a targeted probiotic that we can recommend specifically for this life stage. But what we do know, so there's some emerging evidence from Stanford that shows that eating fermented foods, which have lots of strains and unpredictable what strains are in which food, depending on who's made it, where, what. So kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, miso, kimchi, that eating 3 to 5 portions of those foods a day have a measurable impact on your immune system and how much inflammation, how many inflammatory markers you show, compared with a high fiber diet. So there's an additional benefit to having fermented foods on top of the fiber.
So 3 to 5 times a day, so little and often?
Yes. So, you're adding a spoonful of sauerkraut to your salad. Maybe you're stirring a spoonful of kimchi into your soup. And for breakfast, you've had your natural yogurt is another really good example of an underrated fermented food that's accessible to most people with kefir. Then there you go. You've had a really nice variety of different strains introduced to your diet through food.
Okay, I must ask you then, what do you think about drinking collagen for skin health and gut health as well?
Yes. So collagen, I was very skeptical at first. I was like, makes no sense because a collagen is a protein. When you absorb it, it gets broken down to amino acids. So I'm like, why would eating a specific protein? It doesn't make any sense. Your liver breaks it down to the amino acids and then chooses the amino acids it needs. But the research actually shows, and now, again, take a step back. A lot of the research is funded by the companies that make it, so there's a little bit of bias there. But there seems to be some benefit, especially in women in midlife. So my answer to collagen, and actually this is my answer to quite a lot of supplement questions, is that if you notice that it works for you and there's a visible benefit to you and to the outcome you're looking for, then carry on. If it means, my only caveat with that is that as long as it doesn't make you stop eating a certain food. Now, collagen doesn't really do that because it doesn't replace a food. So it's actually one of those supplements that people will take it, but it won't take away from having other good foods in their diet. I have clients who absolutely love taking specific probiotics like Simprove, and to them, it actually improves their health in a measurable way. Great, keep going. If you can afford to do it and it helps you, then who am I to tell you to stop? It's more if you're somebody who has maybe spent time and effort trying a supplement like a collagen and you haven't seen a measurable change for you, then there's no reason to keep taking it. But I have to say, I'm watching collagen. It looks good. It looks better than I thought.
It's quite a heated debate. There's definitely two camps with collagen, which is why I asked you.
Yeah.
Are there any supplements we should be upping or introducing in menopause?
No. So again, no, okay, I'll be a bit less black and white. It depends, right? So if you're a woman who has suffered with micronutrient deficiencies in the past, or perhaps you think that something's not quite right because you really don't feel well and you want to investigate whether that's because there's a micronutrient deficiency, then it's worth having a blood test and finding out, or seeing if there's some really obvious symptoms that can point us in that direction. The problem with supplementation of micronutrients is that we should really be addressing why you're not absorbing them properly from your food, or why you're not eating the foods that contain those nutrients. So supplementing micronutrients for life is not really a sustainable option. We know from quite big clinical trials that supplementing micronutrients does not have the same health benefit as getting those nutrients from the diet. Whether you're looking at reduction in cancer risk, or reducing the risk of bone fractures. Like, there's been some really nice, elegant studies to show Alzheimer's risk. For example, taking omega-3 supplements will not protect you in the same way that having fish in your diet will. So we have to be careful why we're taking supplements. I'm really, really, really mindful of menopause supplements. We do not have the trials or the data to show that these specific formulations do anything special. Their markup is insane. So, I have women who sometimes will be taking a menopause supplement, which when you look at the composition is very similar to a Boots multivit, but it costs like 25 times the price. So let's be really mindful of what's called meno washing. Just because it says it's for the menopause on the packet doesn't necessarily mean it's actually going to help any more than something else. But I would say in some cases, supplements are needed, but it's always a stopgap to getting people back to where they should be with their diet and lifestyle. For me, it's not a long-term solution. There's always exceptions to that rule. For example, IBD sufferers, IBS sufferers, they will likely need supplementation for things like vitamin B for a longer duration of time. And similarly, people who are vegan, they will need supplementation. So there are some exceptions to that. Work with a healthcare professional who understands supplements and micronutrient and diet, essentially. So dietitians, nutritionists. And I think be a bit wary if someone flat out recommends 55 different supplements without really understanding why each one is being prescribed. That's my advice.
So a take home for people then, apart from nutrients, is just diet. So a take home that people could introduce to their lifestyle right now, just a few things that they can do for menopause wellness.
Yes, so eat more plants. I hope that's... So eat more plants, make them as colourful as possible. So there's some nice small trials that show that when women during the menopause transition are given things like blueberries, beetroot, so very colourful plants, it can ease especially vasomotor symptoms. So the hot sweats, the hot flushes, the night sweats.
Okay.
So colourful plants.
Colourful plants is the take home.
Colourful.
And thank you so much. Thank you to our panellists, our experts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to the Beauty Triangle. Now, we don't have time for a Q&A, but if you have any burning questions, you can quickly grab the experts before they leave. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.